Learn how to write Tuesday in calligraphy, starting with brush pen calligraphy. So as always with a brush pen, we're going to use heavy pressure on our downstrokes so that we get a nice thick line, and then lighter pressure on horizontal strokes and upstrokes. This is a modern calligraphy style for the word Tuesday, and everywhere that I've changed the color in this word is where you're going to lift up your pen to create a new stroke. So there are lots of different ways you can do the S in calligraphy. The one that I'm going to do looks like this, but you could also do something that looks more like that, or this. We have a whole course that goes through different letter variations, but I like this style for a modern calligraphy look. And this Pentel brush pen is my most favorite brush pen, especially for beginners to modern calligraphy, because it's super easy to use and it looks so beautiful, and I love all the color options that they have. Now we're going to do faux calligraphy so that you can create this calligraphy look using any pen. So to do faux calligraphy, I'm going to start off just by writing the whole word in a script style using a regular pen. You can use any pen for this. And if you have some knowledge of calligraphy, then you can just write it out in this basic calligraphy script, and then we'll go back in and add the thick strokes. But you could actually apply this technique to your own handwriting if you'd like. Okay, so that was step one, is getting down the kind of like the bones of the word. And then step two, we're going to make it look like calligraphy by adding in thick strokes, and the thick strokes are always going to go on your down strokes, anywhere that your pen comes in a downward direction. So this stem comes down, we're going to add a second line to thicken that up. Now this crossbar, this wavy crossbar was horizontal, so we can leave that alone. I kind of messed that up at the end, or you can add a very subtle shading right there. Just going to draw all of our downstrokes and then leave the upstrokes alone so that they stay thin. My pen is starting to run out, it seems. We have a course and other videos that go really in depth of how exactly you know where to place these downstrokes, like if you have a question about which side of the stroke it goes on. But for now, this is just a demo of how to write this word. So you can apply that technique to your letters by thickening the downstrokes, and then at the end you can choose to leave it like this with the open gaps, or you could go fill it in by coloring all of those gaps in to make it look more like the one above it. Okay, and lastly I will show you how I write capital letters using a brush pen. So I'm going to do the same idea of thick downstrokes and then thin upstrokes and horizontal strokes using the brush pen. These are going to be shorter letters than what I have up here. And I also like to make them more upright, like this piece of the T is standing straight up and down instead of being slanted like the calligraphy. Let's do bounce lettering now using my Apple Pencil on my iPad, and the app is called Procreate. We're bringing certain parts of the letters below the baseline, and certain parts can be a little bit more open. We can do different letter forms, so instead of making the S like this, we could make it more casual like that. And we can, again, have an open loop for the D, and even do something like this where the loop itself has a bit of a flourish. And maybe we can mimic that flourish style with the bottom of the Y. So that's one way you can do some bounce lettering in calligraphy using the iPad, or you can do this style with a brush pen or even faux calligraphy. Now we'll write Tuesday in Copperplate. The majuscule T is actually just a little bit shorter. The stem of the T is a little shorter than your normal stem. So normally a capital stem is 3 spaces tall when you compare it to the X height, but in the T you make it a little bit shorter, so it's 1, 2.5 spaces tall from the baseline up. And that allows us to add the cap on top. Now we'll continue with our lowercase letters, trying to keep them consistent height. The S goes up a little bit above the X height. So the U and the E touch the top of the X height and the S goes a little bit above. My S was just a little bit narrow in here. I would have liked that space to be just a tiny bit wider, to be the same width as the white space inside the other letters, like the U, the same width. Okay, now D is a tricky letter, and I kind of messed that one up a little bit here. It should not overlap the right side of the oval so much. Try again here on the A, so I'm thinking in my head of coming up, placing my pen a little bit to the right, and then coming down so it touches. Now with that one, I was just like a tiny bit off. This one overlapped too much, this one was a tiny bit too far away. So ideally it would have been touching just the right side of the oval. And there's Tuesday. Now let's flourish Tuesday with a brush pen. For my stem, I'm probably going to add this at the end, but I'm going to bring it below the word. And then instead of making just a simple oval that goes into the wave at the top, I'm going to make it almost like a double oval. So I'm going to spiral around, then go into the oval, and then cross through the top to add a nice fancy flourish. Now the next few letters in this word are not great candidates for adding flourishes to, because we just need to keep the basic letter form in order to keep it legible, and they don't really have any natural extensions for us to flourish. But once again, we have a letter D, and for this one, I will add the flourish at the end. I'm also going to wait on adding the Y flourish. So for the D, I'm going to do a loop that comes up and around and then it crosses through. Like this. And for the Y, I'm going to do something similar to mimic that shape, but upside down basically. So I'm going to make the loop and then cross through it with a wave that goes in the other direction. Okay, and just to balance it out over here, I'm going to add a little bit of a wave that comes below the first letter. And this is one way you can flourish Tuesday with a brush pen. Now let's write Tuesday in Spencerian on the iPad. So first I'm doing a stem. Now a stem in Spencerian, the shade, instead of being evenly distributed like in Copperplate, it's towards the bottom right here. And then this is just a very basic way to write the T. And then on the iPad, you can zoom in or out as close or as far as you want. If you zoom in more, you'll be able to see a little bit closer of the details, but then your hand has to move farther physically because you're enlarging it on the screen. I usually make it a little bit larger because I like to see all the details. I feel like there's too much of a gap right here, so I'm going to erase this part of the T and just try that one more time. I'm actually going to use this move tool and also move my stem up just a tiny bit. And that's Tuesday in Spencerian. Thanks for watching our series on how to write the days of the week in calligraphy. Let us know in the comments which style is your favorite, and check out the blog post at lovelyloops.com to see pictures of all of these styles, as well as more helpful tips and free resources. Thanks again, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.